Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from Amsterdam and across the world online. You're now watching The Moore Show and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm about to be joined with my guest, Lucy Pringle. Now, Lucy was educated in England, France and Switzerland and has travelled widely, spending 12 years in Jamaica where her eldest son was born. Now, she is a founder member for the Centre of Crop Circle Studies, and she is widely known as an international authority figure on the subject and the pioneering research into the effects of electromagnetic fields on living systems. Now, she is also an aerial photographer. Lucy has the UK's most comprehensive photography crop circle library, which is continually added to as each season progresses. Lucy Pringle, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for coming on. Now, Lucy, whereabouts are you based in the UK?
In Hampshire.
In Hampshire, right, okay.
Where there used to be so much happening in the fields. And in fact, we had 5 this year in Hampshire, which was really great.
5 crop circle formations.
That's right.
Right, okay. Well, I'm in Holland. Well, they don't like that being... They prefer it being called the Netherlands over here.
Right.
And I know there's quite a bit of crop circle formation taking place over here as well, from what I hear. Where is the sort of epicenter for all this? Where is the nexus for all this? Would you say it's the UK?
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, I think there's no shadow of doubt about that. We were one of the very first to bring the subject into universal attention. And we were, as you know, we're a small but sacred island, and we have a huge amount of sacred places. And the phenomenon is very, very carefully selected where these things happen. They all happen on on energy lines or ley lines, whichever way you want to put it, but also very close to sacred spaces, because this is where you have the network of energy in the land.
Yes, and you think that there must be then some big energy lines going through particular parts of the UK where the formations are taking place. Then surely.
Yes, but they're also connected with sacred sites. I suppose that's one and the same, really, isn't it? Because our ancient forefathers, when they were sort of walking along, they didn't need machines or technology or anything. They'd get a tingle in their hands or some other indication that there was some maybe telluric, which is the electric current going through the earth and going through the sea, that they would get some indication of something, a special spot, and maybe they'd just lay a few little stones, and then somebody else would come along and then more stones, and so build it into a little cairn. And these are where our ancient churches, and in fact our great cathedrals are built, really due to our ancients, our ancient forebears.
Absolutely. So what ancient sites are some of these some of these formations taking place more than others?
Well, the Iron Age hill forts, certainly quite a lot in Dorset, but the particular places I think that will spring to everybody's mind, of course, are Stonehenge and Avebury, Silbury Hill, West Kennet Long Barrow, Windmill Hill, the Sanctuary. That's all in one very, very condensed little area. And then you go into Dorset and you get all these Iron Age hill forts like Hill, Hambledon Hill, you get Maiden Castle, you get Hod Hill, you get goodness knows how many, you get Chiselbury Ring, Figsbury Ring, goodness knows how many, many ancient places are just literally littered around the landscape. But
Yes.
also another very, very important point, and this is absolutely intrinsic to the whole formation process, is that it's essential that there's water underneath in order for these formations to appear. And it's only on chalkland that you get the aquifers underneath, i.e. the underground springs. And in the States, because when I was there one time and I was asking one of the researchers where had they done any geological or geophysical experiments, and did they know where the majority of their circles, on what sort of geophysical conditions they were. And he said, well, they're mainly on limestone. Now, limestone also is porous, and you have water underneath. So this is one of the absolutely intrinsic qualities that is necessary for crop circles to appear. In fact, it was John Aubrey who, in the old days, he lived from 1627 to 1676. And he's actually one of our people to whom we owe a tremendous debt, because he and William Stukely in the 1600s, they recorded both Avebury and Stonehenge as it was in those days. And but for those records, we would have no idea what they looked like. They were philosophers, they were antiquarian historians, they were absolutely brilliant people. And John Aubrey said he was fascinated by the grass circles that were appearing on the Wiltshire Downs. And he wrote saying, I presume they are generated from the breathing out of a fertile subterraneous vapour. Now, what he didn't know was that 400 years earlier, he had actually solved part of the problem.
Okay. Well, it's, these designs are just unreal in a sense. They're amazing. They're absolutely stunning. And I want to get into as well, really, that what your views are on the nature of the reality that's maybe forming these, or what your ideas behind after all your years of working in this field. But just to begin with as well, I got to know of you through Dolores Cannon.
Oh right. Yeah.
Yes, that it was. I remember she told me about yourself.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to get you on. It was just never, our paths just weren't able to cross. So I'm, like I said, but before we came on, yes, I'm very grateful to have you on now.
She was an old friend of mine.
Yes. Well, she's still with us, but just in a different way.
Yes.
And sorry, I'm just feeding back here a little bit. It's all right. I'll just ignore that. So, with your work, how many years have you been doing this?
Well, I suppose it's over 26 years.
26 years. Now, what initially got you into it? Just very briefly, what initially got you into doing this work?
Well, I've always been fascinated in the unexplained. That has always held tremendous fascination for me. Oh, I suppose right from childhood, I must have been a sort of like an elephant child, a really annoying thing, saying why, how, and all that sort of thing. I wanted answers to questions that puzzled me, and sometimes the adults couldn't always answer my questions, which was quite disillusioning at that age, because adults are supposed to know everything. Anyhow, I sort of went from the Loch Ness monster into Einstein's theory of relativity, which I can never properly grasp. And then infinity bothered me terribly, because I thought, well, how can't infinity be finite at some very, very distant point? I mean, it's quite impossible that it can't be. And then the crop circles came along, and I bothered me most terribly. Where is it coming from? What is the answer? Who or what is making them? What intelligence is behind this? I must have an answer. Well, after a little bit, I I sort of grew up in a way, and I realized that my research, and I've done research now for almost 26 years in one way or another, and we'll talk about that later. But I suddenly realized one day, it dawned upon me, I suppose very gradually, that I was never going to get the answer. And once I reconciled myself with that, everything seemed to fit in quite nicely. I mean, I couldn't care less about whether infinity was finite or not. And I suddenly realized that there had to be an ineffability about certain things, and what a good thing it is. Because we need to have the unknown, we need to have the mysterious, we need to have the magic. And if you had answers to all these things, what a desperately boring world it would be. There'd be nothing really new, nothing sort of to explore the mind and the body and the soul. So I'm really very glad that, so far as I'm concerned, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, right. And just going back to, okay, an answer for what though? Sorry.
Well, for how they actually happen.
Yeah, that's what you. Yeah, I thought you might mean that. Yeah. So okay, so after all these years doing it, we are as clueless as day one in the sense of the potential of what's forming this.
Well, exactly. I think we've. I can tell you about an eyewitness account, which was absolutely dramatic, and this has helped us fundamentally along the scientific rationale of how they actually form. But where the progenitor is, or who or what is the progenitor, the source, we still are no further. We hypothesize that they probably form in the ionosphere, and this is an area of huge atmospheric electricity. And then it stems from there. That possibly, but then there has to be a guiding hand behind it, or an intelligence, or a consciousness. And there was something lovely that I read the other day, talking about consciousness, because, this is a fascinating subject again. This is mysterious. Consciousness is mysterious. It's all pervasive. That consciousness may not be generated by the brain, but rather transceived by the brain. That's to say that consciousness may be a fundamental non-local property of all dimensions of the universe. And that rather than being an epiphenomenon of brain activity, it may instead be that the brain acts as an interface that allows consciousness to manifest locally on a material plane. And that fits in with my way of thinking. It's beautifully articulated, and it fits in with my level of thinking.
Well, in all the years of your research, has that angle come in more recently? I mean, if you went back 20 years, and you said those words to yourself, would you have been able to go down that road?
I don't think I was thinking quite along that lines. I was thinking much more in black and white. And now I'm thinking in all different sort of shapes and colours and open in a different way. I think I'm more open in a different way because I've investigated on the scientific level and absolutely fascinated by the science, even though I'm not a scientist. But on my father's side, they were all extremely brilliant ones. And I worked with scientists from all over the world who were quite prepared to put up with my wacky ideas. And sometimes they say, well, you've just described theorem so and so and so and so. And I say, oh, jolly good, have I? That doesn't mean a thing to me.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, and what you had to say there, in a sense, the body is almost like a radio, and it's receiving the transmission of, as you could say, the signal of our soul.
Well, it's
maybe
receiving and transmitting.
Yes. And transmitting, yeah. I mean, it's beyond our current understanding, isn't it? This is, and these are ideas that we're putting out there right now. But it is, you are time served, and you have been looking at this for a long time, and that's where you're coming towards a bit more. And it says a lot, really. It really does. There are those out there that would say these are, some sort of maybe extraterrestrial messages. Could it be a combination of consciousness and extraterrestrial messages?
Well, yes, it probably is the consciousness. There has to be a consciousness behind it. I.e., if there's an intelligence, there's a consciousness.
Of course. No, of course there is. Yeah, I mean, I always think that if there's an ET presence, it is highly conscious compared to us, or highly spiritually evolved. But yeah,
not necessarily spiritually evolved, technologically evolved. But it
could be. It could just be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be spiritually evolved. That's right. I'm saying that. Yeah.
But maybe you feel that. I don't think I could actually say that, because I don't know about that, because there's such a divide really between. Sometimes there's a divide between technology and spirituality, but other times you actually hear the crop circles are really the link between the two, because you get these highly technological and geometric and highly complex circles, and yet they have this spiritual aspect to them as well. So in a way, they are the link that combines both technology and science and spirituality.
Yes.
In a rather lovely way.
Absolutely. And what about those who perceive messages within the crop formations themselves?
Well, that's fine. That's absolutely fine, and indeed we've had several, like the Crabwood one in 2002, which was the face of the ET, and then there was the disk, which looked as though it had been created by a completely different intelligence, and that disk actually was translated into English, and I've got the translation here, which actually I thought was quite superficial at times, but then I said to myself, well, I wonder if there's more to this. This is one of the wonderful things about crop circles. They create thinking, they create thought. And I thought to myself, well, maybe it's a stenanagram, and that is a code within a code. And I don't know, but this is what it said. Beware the bearers of false gifts. Some was in uppercase, some in lowercase. And their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. And then there was a damage word. There is good out there. We oppose deception, conduit closing, and that was really saying end of message. And then we had the incredible one the year earlier at Chilbolton, where we had the face, which was a generic face, really. And alongside, in the same field, we had the Arecibo message, which was it was based on the Arecibo message, which had been sent up by the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico, which was the largest telescope at the time, giving fundamental knowledge out to other intelligences. And so it was based on that information, but that information had just been adjusted or changed slightly. There was an extra atomic number, which was atomic number 14, if I can recall that, and that was silicon, and that was led forward to this possibility that maybe the other intelligence was silicon based. We don't know. There were all sorts of little changes in the DNA, changes in the way, because Earth, which was there was one planet which had been highlighted in the original message, which must have been Earth, and then in the second one, which appeared in the fields, I think it was Earth and Mercury. I'm not certain. I'd have to check on that. But there were just tiny, tiny little differences, which I think were absolutely significant. It was fascinating. So those were very obvious. Those were very obvious, what you might call communications. But then you get some really absolutely fantastic mathematical ones, like pi to the power of 9, and no mistaking that was absolutely fundamentally precisely correct.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always thought of the crop circles as either being some sort of advanced race, ET based, or as my thinking's progressed. Then we've all heard of the orbs that seem to travel above the formations of these circles. And what are the orbs? They seem to go in and out of our reality. Is this the nature of reality that we don't understand, that potentially where these creators of these crop circles are coming from are from dimensions that we don't understand currently?
Well, yes, I mean, some of them, without a doubt, they are certainly seem to have an intelligence behind them. Their movements would indicate that for a fact. Other people relate them to just plain magnetic fields, but then there are the other ones that absolutely defy that reasoning. But it's another thing that's very interesting, and I want to pursue this further, is that the people who make some of the circles, they've been scared witless by what they call the grey man.
And what is that?
I want to pursue this more. This seems to me to be a sort of transparent being, i.e. they call them the grey man.
Wow.
They frighten them to bits.
And who's come forward to report these stories?
Various of the people who make them, and I want to pursue this further, Kevin, to get more details about this. But I've never been particularly fond of the hoaxes, and I'm perfectly plain. So I just hope one of them will be kind enough to speak to me about this, because I want to get more information on this.
Okay.
I've been told, from very good sources that
isn't that fascinating? Isn't it? Isn't that fascinating? Wow. Okay. Well, I'm sure they would speak to you. I'm sure they would. And is it difficult to tell the hoaxed circle formations to the ones which are under investigation by yourselves to be of genuine made by a phenomena that we don't understand? Is it difficult to tell the difference, or would you need to use a bit of science to tell the difference?
Well, I think there's probably a combination of all those things, but the most fundamental and the most credible way of determining is to actually go in on foot, but to be one of the very, very first people to go in. And you can examine them on many different levels, because if it's in green crop, you look for quite different things to if it's in mature crop, the ripened crop. And in the green crop, there's a grey film or a glaze which runs up the entire length of the stalk, and also onto the leaves. And if you just rub it with between your thumb and forefinger, it goes, and you'd see the shiny green underneath. Well, if you have a lot of people, or just not a lot of people, but one or two people going in with a board and stomping, you get marks. And in fact, I've even seen, people wear these shoes with very heavy tread soles. I've even actually picked up seeing tread marks on the ground. Yeah. So what I'm saying really is it is very easy to distinguish, to see in green crop, if there has been what we call any human involvement or any weight applied to the crop.
Okay.
And also another thing is that you feel very, very carefully the wheat between your thumb and your forefinger, and if it's crushed in any way, that's not good. I mean, in oilseed rape, or as I think America calls it, canola, that's the easiest to detect, because if you bend it in an angle of more than 40 degrees, it snaps. And also it bruises terribly easily, it crushes frightfully easily, and you can go in, and that is the easiest of all to detect. And then if we move on to the ripened crop, we again see if there's any of this crushing business. And the next thing we look for is to look underneath, to see if any of the seeds have been knocked out of the seed heads, because when the crop is very ripe like that, any pressure put on them is going to knock the seeds out.
So just let me ask you then, when some researchers in this field talk about top node stretching or expulsion cavity holes blowing in the nodes, have you come across these terms?
Well, certainly I have. That's very much part of the research done in the States. But what I found is, talking about the cavity expulsion nodes, around the nodes, this was used very much as a sort of litmus test as between genuine and not genuine. But I remember going into one in Eastfield, about 10 years ago, and it had absolutely, I went in with a friend who was a very good researcher, and we found the most wonderful blown nodes, expulsion cavities in them. And then he went off, and I thought, well, I'll just have a look outside. And going quite a little bit away, I found brilliant ones, absolutely the same as in the circle. Well, I know that the aura may extend quite a way out, and so you still get effects a little way away. But if you go right to the edge of the field, yards away, and you still find them, no. So that scotched that idea. As for the top node being stretched, I really wouldn't know. But if one isn't genuine, I say to myself, well, is that one genuine too? So I don't go by that anymore, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, people will see these terms mentioned in documentaries when they watch them, online. So it's good just to, to get your take on this as well. So I appreciate that, most definitely. Again, when you walk into these fields, well, actually, before we mention about walking into the fields, let's go back to what happened to yourself when you were getting some actual healing, the healing properties from these formations as well. Now, you had a bad shoulder, I believe. If you just take us to that story.
That was all the way back in 1990.
Yeah.
And what I do stress before I tell you of healing stories, because there have been several a lot of healing stories, that you're not always going to feel well when you go into a crop circle. And if you don't, for goodness sake, come out quickly. That is what I always advise people. And if you're pregnant or thinking of becoming pregnant, also don't go in. And if you've got a pacemaker, which, heart device, such as a pacemaker, always consult your doctor before going into a crop circle. These are just little warning snippets, because we've had so many electrical failures and things. And also, regarding pregnancy, I've also had quite a lot of reports that have not been absolutely brilliant. So going back to my healing, and this was what really got me into the research area. This was in very, very early days. And when I first brought out my first questionnaire, and I have to say I've got well over 800 now. I've got the largest database in the world of what has happened to people. And it's a complete melange of the two. I'd been playing tennis one day, and I'd been standing at the net, and somebody whacked, it was mixed doubles, they whacked a ball at me, and I got it back, but I really, really damaged my shoulder in the process. I think I probably hit it in a bad way. Anyhow, that night when I went to bed, oh, it was so sore. I couldn't even lift my arm to clean my teeth before I went to bed, and I thought, oh dear, this is worrying, because I was flying for the very, very first time the next day, and I can't tell you, my excitement was sort of bubbling over. And the next morning it wasn't much better, but I thought, damn it, I'm jolly well going to go. And luckily I had a gear change, so I just kept my right arm on the wheel and then steered, which is not very exerting. And then with my left hand I could change the gears. So we flew, and of course when you're up in the air and you see these things, it was the year of the giant Alton Barnes pictogram, which set the whole world alight, and really was the sort of vanguard of the interest in the subject. And we flew over another one at Santons in Burden, and there was a third one, but the main one in Alton Barnes was just absolutely fantastic. I took a friend and my sister with me, and I forgot about everything in the airplane. I was transfixed, and it was just amazing. And then when we landed and I was driving back, I said, oh Lord, my arm is so sore. And we happened to stop at a little place called Morsted, where there was a crop formation in the field. And I knew the farmer very well, so I knew we could go in. And I had my pendulum with me. I used my pendulum a lot. And I dowsed for the highest energy spot. And I sat there. It was such a lovely day. It was a sunny day, and I just sat there thinking, oh, how wonderful all this is. And then I realized an energy was rippling through my shoulder. And I thought, wow, oh, wonder what on earth this is doing to me. So after a bit, I thought, well, I'll gingerly wiggle my shoulder. And I found it was completely healed. So I called to my friend, and she'd got a very nasty condition called systemic scleroderma, which it's a whole body condition. But also one of the drawbacks is that you can't sleep flat at night. So I said to Maggie, listen, why don't you come and sit here? I said, it's a good spot. I didn't say what had happened to me, just in case, nothing happened to her.
That's right.
And the moment she sat down, she said, oh, this is wonderful. She said, I'd like to stay here forever. And I said, well, I've got to do some measuring and I've got to do some dicing and everything, and then I'll come back. So when I came back, there she was lying flat on the ground. Well, of course, I'd forgotten that she couldn't lie flat on the ground. And she said, look at me. And I said, yes, it's lovely, isn't it? So what? She said, don't you realize I haven't been able to lie down for, I don't know how many years it was, 5-10 years.
Wow.
And there she was. So I thought, well, hold on a minute, because I'd gone in without any expectations. She had totally no expectations. None of this research had actually been done. And I thought, well, this is just extraordinary. Here we both are. Something amazing has happened to both of us. And nobody's doing any work on it. So I thought, I'm going to do this. And I was so fascinated. And as I say, that's been part of my research ever since. But my focus at the moment is the temporary relief of Parkinson's disease. And this is really, really important to me. And I'm working with mainstream scientists, and we're getting extraordinary results.
That's incredible. So there's some part. I mean, the healing aspect is just on its own is incredible.
No, it's not always healing. Hold on, it's not always healing.
No, sorry, you did say that.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, why is it? Why is it not then? Why is it for some and not for others? What is behind the intent of someone that goes into that field then, or that formation?
Their intent, I think they go in thinking, oh, how fantastic, what a beautiful day, how wonderful. And so if they feel quite a bit better, I don't get any reports, because I think they expect to feel a bit better. But I get more negative reports because they're surprised when they don't feel well. And so this is the expectation of people. And this is why when I write up my reports, I don't know if you've read any of them latterly, because this has a lot to do with the scientific work on the
Sure.
I always this is why I say to people, come out if you don't feel well. But their expectation, and this is why when I write up my reports, that I make it very, very factual. I don't elaborate or seek to make it sort of sensational or anything like that, because when you're dealing with people, some of whom may not be well and everything, you never want to give them false hope. And this is why I say it's temporary relief. A friend of mine in 1997, she was really the genesis of this, because she had Parkinson's and she desperately wanted to go into a circle. And I said, no, I said, I'm not going to take you because you're not well and you might not feel well. So anyhow, she rather sort of bullied me a bit or persuaded me. So I said, well, okay, what I'll do, I'll try and find a circle that's as near 100% beneficial as possible. And there was one in 1997 down at Alton Priors in Wiltshire. And I went down day after day. I went in the circle. I felt totally fine. I stood at the edge of the field, talking to people as they came out, collecting reports. And everybody seemed that I could speak to, and I thought everybody who'd gone in justified, felt fine. So I said to Mary, listen, I think this might be the one for you. But again, it has to be entirely on your own, it has to be your own responsibility. So she went in with a friend, and they sat in the centre for not very long, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. And she stopped shaking, not just for a few minutes or for a few hours. She actually stopped shaking for 24 hours. Now, when you see Parkinson sufferers shaking so many times, literally per second, to shake for that length of time was quite dramatic. And so over the years, this was what kept me in, because I was conducting my research, bearing bottles of water, getting that, analysing extraordinary changes in the structure of the water, doing brain activity tests, testing the endocrine system, doing a host of other research. But I wasn't actually moving forward. I was getting consistent results, which of course is what mainstream science wants. But also I wanted to move forward. And we weren't, and I was getting more and more frustrated and thinking, well, how long am I going to stay in this phenomenon? And then one year, Hazel Drummond got in her Asara technique, which Stanford University, William Tiller said this was the best diagnostic technique available. She, in her brain activity level, she was able to go up to the gamma level. We'd only gone up as far as the beta before that. So going up into the gamma level, we took people into this particular circle. And we found that quite a lot of them were actually spiking in the gamma level whilst being inside the circle. So I really didn't know anything about gamma. And so I went onto the internet and I read article after article, and there was one little tiny paragraph in one saying, in the gamma level of brain activity, the brain naturally produces dopamine. Well, dopa, I think it is, because dopamine is the synthetic substance which is given to replace the missing chemical. And I thought, wow, got it at last, perseverance. And that was what must have happened to Mary. She must have got this burst of gamma. So I was given the name of a scientist in the Midlands. And as I haven't got any letters after my name, and scientists, due to the press, are notoriously wary of crop circles, it took me 2 weeks to actually summon up enough courage to pick up the telephone. And one day I felt quite brave. And I thought, well, I'll do it. I've got to do it. I'll do it now. Otherwise, all my courage would have gone. And I got straight through to him, and before he had a chance to cut me off, I whacked into what I was doing. And he said, now this is extremely interesting. So I thought, oh, how exciting. He said, this is exactly the line of research that we are following. That if we raise the level of brain activity in our Parkinson sufferers, their dyskinesia is inhibited, i.e. they stop shaking. So yippee, I was on the right track. And so we've been working on it, we've been using all different techniques, and each year we get astounding results. I'm just waiting for the results from this year. But it's exciting, what I say, stuff. It's really exciting research, because so many people have Parkinson's. And I was interested to see that Edinburgh University has found that there is a molecule in the DNA, I think, or in the spine, which in some way is related. I've got to do more research into this, to what could happen to people's brains with Parkinson's. So there's a huge amount of research going on. And a cousin of mine, he died from Parkinson's about 6-7 years ago. I was devoted to him, so this is actually very dear to my heart. And if we can find what is happening, you see, we know the cause, but we don't know we know that let's say that we know we know why it happens as a result of gamma, but what is it in the circle that is producing the gamma?
Well, that's it, yeah.
Or producing these effects. And this is something which we're striving to find, because if we could find the source of because gamma is a very, very high frequency. What is producing this very, very, very high frequency? We might be well on our way to getting a permanent relief for Parkinson's. And that really would be absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
so,
yes.
So it's work that I think is well worth pursuing.
Yes, absolutely, and it's fascinating to hear your take on the crop circles, and that being what your research is based on, what you've just discussed there as well. And I also, from researching you had experiments, whether they're still taking place or not, where you would bury water at the sites of these formations as well for different tests.
We did. I conducted those for many, many years. In fact, I got masses of bottles that haven't been tested, because one year I got tremendously keen, and I think I went into I don't know how many crop circles, and of course a lab is only prepared to analyze one set of bottles. So I got a bottles of this rather special water, and yes, what we were finding was, in one particular case, we were finding that we went right through the different charges, and we could find there was definitely a change in what was going on in the structure. Other ones we have done, we've done basic ones analyzing the minerals. And this has been really quite interesting. On several occasions, we've had really absolutely extraordinarily weird results. I wonder if I can find the results of one which were really absolutely fascinating, because we were finding there was a huge increase in the nitrate level. Now, this is not too surprising, because nitrates are sprayed onto the field. But what was really, really extraordinary was the level of nitrate, the heightened level of nitrate, which was way beyond anything we were finding in the control samples buried outside, and so it was inexplicable. And here we are. This particular formation, there was because I bury volvic water. Dr. Cyril Smith who was measuring the resonances and the frequencies, he said, please use Volvic water because it's the most constant and it doesn't go above 4 hertz. So I've been doing that ever since. And in this particular one, what I do, just to clarify it a bit more for the listeners, I bury the control sample first, control samples, outside the circle, somewhere away. I then go in and bury the ones inside at various different positions. And when we come to collect them, which we do by dowsing, and which is the best method I can tell you, the dowsing is so useful. We collect the ones inside with 99.9 success, I have to tell you. And then, having done those, we collect the control samples. So the control samples, using that method, they never actually go into the anywhere near the circle. But in this particular circle, we found not only an increased level of nitrogen way, way, way above anything that is found with spraying, and also ammonia. Now, so far as I'm concerned, and I'm absolutely certain this is 100% true, there is no ammonia in any bottle of water. And yet there was ammonia showing up. And so this scientist with whom I work, I said to him, listen, Jim, I can't believe this. And he said, well, you've got to. He said, it's right in front of your face. He said, the first thing to notice is the correlation between the nitrate and ammonia results. It seems as if there is some breakdown of water into its constituent parts, namely hydrogen and oxygen.
Yeah.
These molecules then attach to free nitrogen atoms, creating both increased nitrate, NO3, and ammonia, NH3. This is an interesting finding. Well, indeed.
It's just incredible.
Quite extraordinary. Well, sadly, after that particular lab, they sent me half-pint bottles to use. Well, can you imagine me burying half-pint bottles in a poor farmer's field? I've always been using 100 ml, and I can get away with that.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. Well, it's
bury half-pint bottles. It would be shocking. So that has absolutely completely curtailed that report. So now that work. But I've done enough of it to have got sufficient results to show that something very, very different is happening inside the circles as opposed to happening outside. And also another research project I had one day, which just happened by pure coincidence, that there was a lab who was prepared to measure the protein levels of seeds. So I collected some from a very, very strange formation where both of this researcher and I felt extremely ill. And we also had strange water results. And we sent the seeds up in blind packages to this lab. And it was absolutely staggering that it came back that in a certain packet, which happened to be the ones we knew from inside the circle, the protein percent level was higher, 40% higher than the control samples outside. So I often say to farmers, you don't know how lucky you are. You know, protein level in the crop circles, well, certainly in that crop circle, one can't generalize really on just one sample. It was 40% higher.
How does it affect the farmers when these circles randomly appear? I mean, what's the perspective of the farmers as well?
Well, some of them are like Tim Carson. He's absolutely fed up. He's had over 100 on his land, and not all of them have been genuine by any manner of means. And this is the trouble, you see, Kevin, when this is very much a sort of touristy area, but it's stopped now almost dramatically because farmers are cutting them out. And as soon as they come in, they're cutting them out. There is one fantastic farmer called James Hussey who lost his wife Jill 2 years ago after a 14-year battle with breast cancer. And he has started up a charity And he allows people into his circles and collects money for this wonderful charity, because there isn't a breast screening unit close by.
Well, that's a good thing.
All the way to Oxford for maybe a 6-minute treatment for 6 weeks daily. And he's one has already, the money he's collected, and another charity has taken it up. He's collected, his aim is 2.9 million. He's collected he's collected, I think it's over 750 from just the crop circles alone. And then other charities have donated, and he's well on his way. I mean, we're also thrilled to donate. In the old days, they were the farmers who stood up and said, we are happy to have people on our land. We like them, we find them interesting, and they've always been very well behaved. So they were absolutely fantastic, and we all owe them a huge debt of gratitude for their help in this subject. And now that Jill isn't here, it's terrible for James, but he's battling on and doing terrific work.
Do you think if any government agencies were looking into crop circles, it would just come back as a denial of ignorance, in the sense of they have no understanding or clue what the nature of the reality of this is? So
I'm sure they have. I'm sure they have looked into it, Kevin. But just like they won't talk about UFOs, they don't seem to admit there could be other intelligences, which quite mathematically is impossible. With all the planets and everything going on, the galaxies, there have to be other intelligences. What form they take, goodness only knows, but there have to, maybe they're just microbes or frequencies, but there have to be other intelligences. There's little doubt about that. They keep these things hidden from the public. And by doing that, they say, it'll frighten everybody. But by doing things, they actually create fear. It's a very short-sighted policy.
Yes, indeed it is. Indeed it is. And do you have much interactions with other crop circle investigators? What is this sort of industry like, in a sense?
I know just about everybody in the crop circle world. Good. And hundreds have come and gone, I can tell you that. Passed through and just disappeared. Yes, I do, but there aren't all that many researchers. There's research in the States with Nancy Toll, but I think she's almost given up. She's very interested in what's happening in Holland with Robert. I'm sure you've heard about him.
I have heard of that story,
yeah,
yes.
And it's interesting. I don't quite know what to make of it, to be perfectly honest. I think I'm the only person doing scientific work in England. There are a lot of other people who are what I call sort of itinerants. They wander around. They're people who live off the land, and they understand the land, and they could be maybe termed as travellers, but not the sort of travellers that you think about as being a nuisance and things. They keep on the land. They keep sort of bands of them, and maybe in the winter they might live in caravans, or they might know somebody's house if it gets too cold and they shelter for the night. But they wander around, they understand the land in a way that maybe not all of us do. And they go into crop circles and they do their research. You don't often get it, well, I've never seen it published, but I have run into one or two of them. And I sit there chatting to them and I think, gosh, you're very wise.
Yeah.
But they're not doing what I might call scientific work. But this is a very sad thing, that in order to be credible, you have to have science behind you. Whereas what they're finding is probably every bit as genuine in reality as to anything that I'm doing in science.
Of course.
But it's not taken as such.
Okay, when was the last crop circle you entered then? When was the sort of last one you researched recently?
Well, the last one I went into, there are two different questions there.
Yes.
The last one I went into was that extraordinary one at Ansty. And this is a very perplexing one. I think you've probably seen it. This huge, it's almost like a sort of shield. It's quite extraordinary. Have you seen that?
No, but we can put it on the screen now, so I can see it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
My website, and look in August, and it'll be one very, very close to the bottom. I think there were only 2 after that. If you scroll all the way down.
Are we okay to put that on the screen right now?
Do. I'd love
Okay.
to see it.
Yep.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we've got it on the screen. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, it is very.
Isn't it fantastic?
Yes.
And there's a lot of debate about that. And so I'm absolutely fascinated. It is huge. It's over 300-foot diameter.
Wow.
And it's the complexity of that. And there's a lot of chat about, people always like to rubbish these things. I don't know why they need to. Well, I think so long as you do good research, that is actually what is very, very important. But you've got to do proper research, and I'm going to get to the truth of this. I'm absolutely determined to get to the truth of this. And it's very close to the little pick your own place, and people are working there until 11 o'clock at night, and they come on again at 6 o'clock in the morning. And what the rubbishers are trying to say is that 8 people over a period of 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks, actually made this, and that they worked at night with lasers, and then during 3 days they actually worked in the daytime. Well, a nameless person has come forward to say that, but this nameless person has not, despite being there, obviously seeing it for 2 weeks, hasn't got any photographic evidence.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Well, it is more than a bit of a problem. It's about a huge problem.
Yes.
And, these people come through, they won't give their names, and they won't produce any evidence whatsoever. So...
No, and you would want to take some... responsibility. You'd be proud of that, yeah.
Certainly would. And also there's a farmer who lives right at the top of the hill, and he comes there every day. He shifts the line along for where his cattle graze, so they've got some fresh grazing every day. He's right at the top of the field, overlooking the top of the hill, overlooking the field.
Yeah.
He sees it every day. And then working there. I mean, how stupid can people get?
Well, very.
Sometimes why have they
yeah.
got to do this? I suppose they want publicity for themselves.
Of course they do.
Way, or they...
Yeah, in a weird sort of way, in some fun, like you say, in some funny sort of way. Yeah, for some reason. I mean, I remember meeting a hoaxer of crop circles at a UFO conference, and this guy was as nice as anything, and he was very open about it as well. That's what he does.
The hoaxers are denied doing this.
Oh well, there you go. Oh, okay, well that says a lot.
They've come forward and said, no, we didn't do it.
No, right, okay. Well, that's again, I mean, what was Dolores Cannon's take on the crop circle formation in your sort of private conversations?
She was utterly fascinated, because I used to run a little society in Petersfield, the Unexplained Phenomenon Research Society. We got so many members, I can't tell you, so many members that we couldn't cope with on the committee. And then we couldn't get anybody else to help with us on the committee, so eventually it faded, which was so sad, because I can't tell you, we were getting people from all over the world. And in fact, I didn't have to look for speakers in the end. People would come to me and say, may I be one of your speakers? So, that was easy for me. But she was one of them. She spoke twice. And she was fascinated by it. I mean, she was, and I spoke at her last conference in London. She was utterly fascinated. I mean, she was very much into that sort of area of thinking and research, because you've got to have a very inquiring mind. You've got to have a very factual mind, because you've got to be able to do the research and get the facts. But at the same time, you've got to have a very open mind to be able to think up different areas of how you look at this phenomenon, how it actually links in with cosmology and geometry, theology. It is one of these subjects that actually incorporates every area of learning. Music is involved, ancient traditions,
That's right.
physics,
Yeah.
everything, absolutely everything is involved in this. So it's like if you go into a library and you say, well, I'm going to read the whole encyclopedia, there's an encyclopedic area of learning in this phenomenon, which is to me fascinating because I love learning and I love researching, and to me this is perfect.
Would it be great to meet you face to face at one point?
Yes,
For a
it
yeah,
Another
at
one of
one.
my tours, because I do 2 tours every year. And
Well,
also, tell you what,
yeah.
very, very exciting is flying in a helicopter with me. And I do that. I take up people. I can take up 2 other people apart from myself. Obviously, I'm not the pilot. That would not. And then we share the costs. And I can't tell you the thrill of flying over not to seeing the circles, but also to see the countryside. And I have this terrible fear that the whole of England is going to be one mass of concrete, and
Well,
with
yes,
new towns
yes.
getting everywhere and all terrible things happening. And then I fly over and I think, oh, it's still England's green and pleasant land.
Well, you know what? I might take you up on that most definitely because one of the main points for this interview as well was to give you some publicity because I understand that you do. Well, you do do a lot of the research yourself. It's funded by yourself, so
I do.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm always desperately looking for funds because being a one-man band and everything, it's desperate, and I've managed to keep going somehow for 26 years, and then I say to myself, I think I'm ridiculous. How can I keep going? Because I just don't have the money. And yes, so any help, any donations, anything would, no
Right,
matter
right.
big, small, medium, I just would be so grateful.
Okay, well, it is true to say that when you're in alignment with yourself, then things just flow, which they have done for you. As you
There's
say,
been done for 26 years, but one always says, well, how much longer can I keep going?
I know, and I bet you've said that quite a bit,
I
for
have,
this work. Yeah, you're still going. That's the great thing.
I
And okay, so if people go to your website, which is
lucypringle.co.uk.
okay, that's coming up on the screen now. So there's many ways to support you, even buying the calendars and the
Yes.
photography. Well, you've got some books as well. That your books have actually been coming up on the screen during the interview. They're available from Amazon as well. Now they're books with some fantastic photography in there of these circles. Formations that you've documented over the years. And as you say on your website, you've got a vast, well, one of the biggest archives probably that I've seen of formations. It's fascinating. So yes, so please, if you can support Lucy, then there are numerous ways to do that on there as well. Because as you said at the beginning of this interview as well, the effects of electromagnetic fields on living subsystems. Get the words right here. That is the area that you're keenly interested in researching as well. Well, you have been as well, and it's
So really my fundamental focus is now on
fundamental.
Parkinson's.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's a little donate button on the website, and also, Kevin, my next calendar is about to come out. I've okayed it with the printer. It's fantastic, and I'm just bringing out, which I hope I might possibly send you, if that would be okay. I'm just doing a video to heavenly music of this year's crop circles, and I call it the magic of the circles.
Wonderful. And how would people get access to that then?
Well, I do a general letter, and where people they want to become a member on my website, they just go in and they join, become a member. It's totally free. I'll have it up on my website in my videos and YouTube. I'll have it up. I'm not certain whether it's on the videos or YouTube, but it'll be up there within the next few days. And it'll be in my general letter. It'll go onto Facebook. It'll go onto Twitter. And I'm not very good at these things, but I've got a wonderful web manager who knows how to do that.
Good. Okay, well, we throughout this interview, everything's been linked up on the screen as well, which is great.
Fantastic.
So that makes it a bit easier, and we've mentioned the websites for the audio version as well. You've probably answered this just very, very quickly. I know we're completely out of time here. I appreciate the time that you've given us for going over. What would you say, then, is the most important message of your work?
I think, golly, there's so many. It's such a huge subject. What I think happens is that when we go into a crop circle, we go into, they have a very curious effect on you, that very often if you just sit there and you meditate, it'll take you up into other levels, or heightened levels of consciousness, and even into sort of other dimensions. And in those other dimensions, it's so beautiful. People have said things to me. I must try and find what somebody said to me, because this is so beautiful. Here it is. Oh, right on top. It wasn't until your presentation on the 27th of July, my 51st birthday, that I realized my past, my present, and my future. I did a musical presentation, which is rather like what I'm going to be sending to you, if I may, when it's finished. How do I do that? Do I send it by your email, or you can download it from my website?
Yes, of course.
The musical presentation.
Yes.
So she said that I realized my past, my present, and my future. In other words, my purpose came into being. The first 3 crop circles that you showed in your sight and sound presentation hit me so powerfully that I wasn't able to breathe. I had an intense release of emotion, feelings of love, release, knowing meanings. In other words, she found her purpose in life. And this is just, to me, is supremely wonderful. And one man, as I was walking, I could tell you stories forever. One man, as I was walking towards the circle, he came up to me, and I think being a woman helps, because, and I'm known quite well, I never laugh at anybody at all, because what they have to say is very important to them, therefore it's important to me. And he said, I'm a virgin croppie. So I said, are you? How lovely. He said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, listen, you just follow me and I'll take you in. And then he said to me, do you think I'll find myself? I thought, what a lovely question. There's a real seeker. Somebody who maybe feels out of sync with the world or everything with himself. So it almost sort of made me cry. I said, listen, I'm going to go in with you. And I said, what you do, you walk around, and if you can find your own spot, just sit down and meditate and let go. And then you'll find yourself hopefully going into other areas of consciousness. I said, if you can't find it, I'll come round and douse for you, and I'll find your spot for you. And he came up to me later and he said, he was burning hot. The moment he sat down, he found his space, and he said he was burning hot. And I don't know else what happened, but I said, well, this is extraordinary. So things happen to people in an extraordinary way. It's rather beautiful.
Yeah,
Magic.
yeah. Well, I didn't expect you to end on saying that, actually, because I was just ending there. What you've said there is so profound. So have you meditated in the crop circles?
Oh,
and where did you end up going?
I channel, you see.
Oh, you channel?
I channel anyhow. I haven't channeled for years, I have to say, but I used to channel every single evening. I went to 3 channeling courses, and I never thought I'd be able to do it. And I thought everybody in the group was doing it, and I looked around and they all seemed to be completely gone, wafting away, and I thought that's fantastic, and I'm the only failure. And then an Irishman said something. Can't to this life of me remember what it was. And suddenly I found I'd gone, I don't know what it was. I suddenly found that I was able to go into this other level of consciousness, and then higher into this higher dimension. And what you always say before you start channeling, because you're quite vulnerable, you say that you want to go into, you're seeking to attain the highest level of spiritual consciousness that you can. You know all about it. And so I used to do this regularly because I was going through quite a lot of problems in my life at that time. And I was asking questions, and I found that the level of consciousness was absolutely blissfully beautiful, because you go into the level of unconditional love. And I came back seeing problems from the other person's point of view, which I hadn't actually seen because I was so shaken by what was happening on my side that I hadn't sort of thought about what was happening on theirs, and this was to do with a lot of things. And this gave me a profound insight into thinking about the other person's perspective.
Yes.
And
yes.
you can do this, but when I'm doing scientific work, often I have to go into circles and do scientific work. And this I find quite difficult, because you have this huge pull to the right-hand side of your brain to sit and meditate, and I have to go into the left-hand side and concentrate on that, and I long to sit and meditate. But when I'm taking groups round, I love that. I love that because I take them into a circle and they want to sit and meditate, and I have the chance, and it's heavenly.
Well, okay, let me ask you then, when you have channeled,
yes,
I don't know if you're able to ask yourself questions before the channeling, for questions to come out by yourself, or you need someone else to ask the questions.
Sometimes I go in with a question, yes.
Oh yeah, you're going with a question, okay. And what has been the answer to the nature of the reality of the crop circles then?
I think it's been fairly elusive, if you might like to say.
Really?
That there is this energy, and I get things like the music of the universe coming down, and I get all sorts of other things coming, but there is nothing. I'll tell you a little story. We probably don't have time, but I'll just fit this in quickly.
Sure.
I think we know a lot, we inquire an awful lot, we seek to learn a lot, but there are certain things for which we are not allowed to know. And one time I was doing a regression with a friend of mine, and I wanted to go up into the Akashic library, seeking more knowledge. And so I got up there and I walked through this tunnel, and I got going towards a huge room, and there was an archway, a stone archway, before I got in, and there was a whole lot of books in a sort of shelf. Well, they weren't in a shelf at all. They were just hanging upside down all around this archway. And I thought, well, that's the most curious thing on earth. Why aren't they falling down? You know, they looked like bricks. You know how you get brickwork around an arch. But they weren't, they were books. Oh, I thought, that is really, really weird. So I went in, and this was this huge, great expanse room, and on one side there was a table with the wise men sitting at it.
Wow. And
I was so completely in awe of this whole thing that I stood rooted at the entrance, and this friend of mine said, go Lucy, go up to them. So I did. I went up, and he said, what's happening? And I said, well, I'm standing there. I said, well, ask them a question. So I didn't know what to say, you see, Kevin. So I said, can you tell me about the alphabet? I mean, how stupid can you get? And the next thing was they laughed, but it was a laugh of pure joy, unconditional love. It was just so beautiful, I can't tell you. And
no judgment. No judgment
whatsoever. The next thing was they produced a tablet. A stone tablet, but it wasn't white. It was a sort of browny colour stone tablet, and on the tablet there were a whole lot of little squares, and within each square there was a symbol. Some were chemical symbols, some were other symbols, and some were other symbols and other symbols. And they said to me, the knowledge of the whole world is in that tablet. And then they took away some of the tablets, and you were left with fewer. And they said the knowledge of the whole world is in those tablets. And we got down to one, and this makes me sort of shivery as I tell you about it. They said the knowledge of the whole world is in that one tablet.
It's incredible.
I came back, and this friend of mine said, "Lucy, tell me, for goodness sakes, what were those symbols?" I said, "I'm terribly sorry, I'm not allowed to remember."
I am I am so grateful that you've shared that story and that you've shared that you channel as well, and that you have that ability. But yet you've kept this interview very much on the science to begin with, and but I think you need that ability to be able to do this type of work and to be able to look beyond the current understanding of what we think we know, because there are the answers there, really, that we it's almost, and you've touched upon in this interview as well, it's almost like we're not supposed to know. There's some things we're not supposed to know. It's beyond our current understanding at this moment. Exactly
it. Yes.
So but that doesn't stop you, and I'm so pleased that you're doing this, continuing doing the research, and I just hope that there's other people that come to you that want to carry the torch as well.
Well, thank you. I would be very grateful for others to help me carrying the torch, but I do have wonderful people in the scientific world who work with me, but I would love for other people to be doing other areas of research, for instance in measuring the crop circles, because if they measured the crop circles and the number of circles within, we could actually tell exactly how long they took to form. Scientifically possible due to the gravitational laws, etc., etc. We haven't touched that subject, and we haven't got time.
Well, we've covered quite a bit, and I'd just like to say, Lucy Pringle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Not at all. It's been a great pleasure.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.com, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.